Hello, in this video we're going to take a look at a 1965 Valco made Gretsch amplifier. This is the model 6162. I believe they called this the Tremolo-Reverb. It has two 10-inch speakers, a front-facing cab like this. The chassis faces topside and is rear-loaded. Right now it is on. You can see both lights on. That means that the power and the standby are on at the moment. Here's the panel. These panels are a bit susceptible to corrosion, as you can see from this one. They are steel, and the plating is pretty thin, and it's kind of notorious for Valco amplifiers to have such rust. Pretty common. But there's our standby and power switch, our fuse. Here are our Tremolo controls. Now this is all after this thing has been serviced. We're going to go back and follow some of the servicing and everything that was done in this video. So if that's something that you would like to stick around for, please do so. And at the end, we will take a listen to what it sounds like. Here's this Gretsch 6162 out on the bench and open. As you can see, I've replaced the speakers with some Jensen mod speakers. The reason is this amp was subjected to a mouse nest at one point, and they got into the speakers and chewed them all up, so they were pretty much toast. I could have probably sent them to be reconed. But at least at this point in time, those are not worth reconing, so they went in the recycle bin. You can get those Jensens from around this era pretty readily on eBay in working condition, but I found these newer Jensen mods to be good replacement speakers, and just decided to go with those. I've replaced the power caps. There was a cap can here that's been removed, and it was dated. Let's see here. That's the it's 5th week of 1965, and that is a Mallory 3-section can cap. And this is kind of odd because if you try to follow a schematic on one of these, they are not the same. This is another example of a 60s manufacturer who didn't really keep up with the schematics as they made changes on down the line. The schematic for this thing shows two distinct channels, this one here and this one up here. But in this amplifier, they only have one channel with two inputs, a standard and a treble. And that's the only channel on the amp. We do have, of course, our reverb and our tremolo. When I got this amp, the tremolo did not work, and the caps, all the caps for the tremolo were replaced, as well as a couple of other caps. And I had some other problems with this amp when I first got it that I just chased round and round and round. The reverb didn't work either, and replaced this the reverb driver transformer with a classic tone. And this is the same company, actually, is still in business. If you buy something from this company, Classic Tone, or they're also called Magnetic Components Incorporated, they were the manufacturers of the original one as well, so that they were actually still in business. So I don't feel too bad about replacing that. That's an exact replacement part for the original one. But that still didn't fix the problem. And what I eventually traced it down to, and this took quite a while, and this was one of those long ones where it's just running around inside here, just pulling hair and searching for the problem. But it came right down to this jack. What was happening is, if we look here on the schematic, here is that driving transformer here. The two stages of gain are in parallel right before it, so it slams this side of the transformer. This side is going to this switch jack is what it is, and it's it's actually always in the on position if you don't have a plug in it, because it's a shorted jack. But what was happening here is there was a path to ground right here at this point. Instead of all the signal coming through here and then out the other side, it was actually getting grounded off right here at the tip, so there wasn't enough oomph to push everything, to push this tank. So it was acting as if the reverb didn't work at all, and it was because this switch, or this jack rather, for the reverb switch was getting grounded. And I'm assuming it was supposed to have had, from the factory, it was supposed to have had a insulated washer insulating it from the chassis, but the front washer was a metal washer. So I don't know if someone had screwed with this and replaced it with a metal washer before me, or if they did it from the factory on accident and this reverb just kind of never worked as it should have. Don't know, but at any rate, it works now, and that's because I finally tracked that down to that switch jack right there. So reverb works, the tremolo works. This is pretty typical for Valco construction. You see all of the terminal strips in this amp. There's several in here. Everything's all it's laid out on terminal strips, and you've got wiring running from each point. All of the codes in this one are dated early 1965, pretty much. That's the consensus on most of these parts. I've also got a plug here. This is a dual chassis. This is the preamp chassis up top. There's a cord that runs from this point and comes down here to our lower chassis, which houses our power supply, rectifier, and our power section, including the phase inverter back there in the back. So we have the phase inverter and two 6973 power tubes down in this bottom power chassis. This is kind of this design sort of serves a bit of a dual purpose. It allows you better heat dissipation for all these much hotter tubes. Instead of hanging them upside down and throwing all that heat up into this chassis, they're down here on the bottom where they can more easily dissipate that heat. But also this provides you some separation between the power section, which is all down here, and of course all the preamp stuff, which is up here. So that's kind of a good design. Piece of shielding here on the inputs. But yeah, just looking through everything, and you'll notice I've labeled these because, you know, again, this schematic was not exact, and this thing was wired in a weird way. I guess I was calling this one V1 according to the schematic. I traced everything out, and this turned out to be V1, V2, but this one was V4, and then this one is the V3. That was the paralleled first stage here. So yeah, everything was a bit off on the schematic, and you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt if you work on one of these. Just understand that this complete channel pretty much doesn't exist in this version of the amplifier. I don't know if I've ever even seen a version of a 6162 with two channels like this. I'm guessing they must have built at least one, because here's a schematic for one. But at any rate, everything has been serviced. Sorry we didn't go through all of the servicing of this amp. This was something that I started long ago and didn't even think to video. So, but we'll video this portion of it. At least I had it open. We could take a look at what it looks like inside now, and what we're going to do is check out the tone and see what she sounds like. Okay, let's take a look at the inside of a typical Valco reverb unit. The reverb unit's usually set in the bottom back of the amplifiers, and they are encased in a cardboard case like this, and it's enclosed. And those little holes right there are for the plugs, and usually they are held again in the bottom back of the amplifier by this big spring. And again, that's typical of Valco from the 60s. Their reverbs were held in like that. But this gives us a chance to look inside the cardboard tank unit. And what's inside it is this. And it's actually a Gibbs reverb unit. It's in two pieces. There's a big bracket, a metal bracket, that the reverb tank itself is suspended from. This one's dated 42nd week of 1964. On the back side here, this is a spacer. They just put a piece of cardboard in here as a spacer. Of course, the tank is suspended with springs inside this big C bracket chassis. And the plugs themselves are mounted to that C chassis as well. This whole unit was probably manufactured by Gibbs, I would say. But if you're looking for a replacement unit for one of these, this is what you need to be looking for. I don't see a model number on here. I do see an F. I don't know, and it's a stamp. So I don't know right offhand if that's going to be some sort of model number or not. I don't see anything else. So if you're looking to replace one of these, that's just your regular Gibbs information, subsidiary of Hammond Organ Company. And these Gibbs tanks were made in somewhere up in the north. Oh, there we go. Yeah, Janesville, Wisconsin. I knew it was somewhere up north. But you find these a lot in Gibson amps as well. I'm supposing other Chicago manufacturers may have used Gibbs tanks also. Can't really think of any offhand, but this gives us a good chance to look inside the tank. Two springs taking care of the reverb. And as anyone who's played a Valco knows, you know, the reverb on these is really cheesy, really funky usually. And that's partly, at least, courtesy to this small Gibbs reverb tank. Before we do anything else, let's take a look at this amp with the front panel off. It's kind of cool the way it's put together, and the whole front panel just flips right out. The speakers actually unplug directly from the bottom chassis, the power chassis here. It makes everything really simple to pull out. So the speakers unplug. The top chassis unplugs from here. Also unplugs here. There's a little plug there. And 4 screws, and this chassis comes out. Here's our little cardboard box of a reverb tank. Here's the upper chassis we can see. But yeah, kind of cool how it all comes apart. Let's open up this bottom chassis here and take a look at it. Here's the bottom power chassis out, and we'll just take a look at it briefly. You can see it's fairly rusty. That's kind of common for these amps. These bottom chassis are, you know, they're going to be the most vulnerable in terms of getting wet because they're sitting on the bottom. So if you ever take this thing anywhere, you know, and there's any moisture in the air whatsoever, it's going to have a tendency to collect on this chassis on the bottom than it is on the upper chassis. And plus, these chassis are all steel, and they were just painted over, so they have a tendency to kind of rust like this. Doesn't really affect anything, you know, but it is rusty. The original cap can is still in place, but the caps have been replaced on this. The inside's fairly clean by comparison. There's all of our new caps over there. It's not pretty, but they're doing the job. Over there. Fairly clean layout. I mean, to be this cramped, getting a lot done down here. So yeah, that's our power chassis. Another thing that's different with this actual amplifier from the schematic is that the phase inverter on the schematic clearly shows a 12AX7 phase inverter. But if we look in the actual amp itself, we have the phase inverter here, and it is a 6EU7, our good old friend the 6EU7. This is definitely factory. All of the wiring is factory. So this is just another example of an amplifier that's significantly different than the published schematic. So not only do we have a entire missing channel, but we have our tubes all mixed up. Most of these bypass capacitors on each of these stages did not exist in the actual amplifier. I added some of these actually to try to send more signal through. I may come actually back through here and remove a couple of them because I think I'm getting a little bit too much. But see, these circled ones are places where these bypass caps are not in the actual amp. Like I said, I did add a couple of them. I added one on this first stage. I may or may not remove that. I'm not really sure. I think I added this one as well, but it wasn't existent in the actual amp. But every one of these stages, by the look of it, had one of those. Kind of an interesting looking tone circuit, the way they have it drawn out. The signal comes from a long wire from the upper chassis down here to the lower chassis and the phase inverter. This one shows it's going into pin 2 of a 12AX7, but again, that's a 6EU7. I presume you could probably take this feed from the preamp if you wanted and put it into an altogether different power amp. It's kind of easy to get to. It's just on the front of the lower chassis. You would have to kind of reach in behind all the tubes and pluck it out, but it's actually just an RCA cable that runs from the upper chassis down to here. So if you wanted to use the preamp, I guess, with a different power amp, I don't know why you would do that, but if you wanted to do it, I suppose you could. But yeah, there's the power section. Alright, this amp ended up having a pretty major problem with one of the sockets. I've retensioned all of the sockets, all the pins, and this V4 socket just wouldn't retension and act correctly. What it was doing was you'd hit a certain note, and this whole socket would just rattle to the point where the amp would no longer operate. It would just go into an oscillation. I think what it was doing was rattling one of the pins ever so slightly loose, and it just couldn't keep going. So I'm gonna replace this socket. I've already drilled it out, and we're gonna take this thing out of here. But I got to document where all the wires are going first to make it a little easier to rewire it back up. So let's get the new socket in and see if that fixes our problem. Alright, we're back with a 6162, and I've had to change a socket. I didn't really realize before now how fragile these sockets that come in these Valcos really are. But if you try to tension these pins, they just have a tendency to fall apart on you if you're not careful. This one, I think that's what happened with this one. Got a little overzealous with the tensioning, and but it's been replaced now. Everything is okay. I've actually replaced it with a little bit of a better socket anyway. This one's a ceramic, and it has a spring inside the shielding, so it's actually gonna hold the tube up inside there, so we won't have the same problem with the tube not making good connection, I don't think, henceforth. This tube socket over here was still popping even after changing out this other socket. So I traced it down to a problem with a couple of the wires, clipped them, and resoldered them and retensioned that socket again, and everything seems to be working perfectly. It's dead quiet. The only thing I have really left to do now is this shield for the input jacks. Actually, it's broken loose on one side. I don't know if you can be able to see it, but it's soldered in two spots up here to each jack, and it's broken loose on this side, so it has a tendency to rattle when you hit certain notes. So I need to come in here and resolder that. If you have a Valco that's making some mysterious noise, some rattling noise, you can't figure out where it's coming from, check this little plate right here and make sure that it hasn't come loose like this one has on one side, and that's just rattling. But beyond that, I'm going to fix that, and then I think we're ready for a demonstration on this thing. Well, it's officially a snow day, so nowhere to do, nowhere to be, nowhere to do. Nothing to do, rather. Nowhere to be. Watching the squirrels run around out here. Let's do some amp demos. Alright, we finally got this thing all serviced and ready to go, and we're going to test it out with a 40th anniversary Fender American Standard Strat. Got my Snoopy jammies on. It's a snow day outside, and let's do some rocking and rolling. The tone is nearly all the way up on about 8 or 9 or so. Let's crank the volume a little bit more and see how much we can get this thing to break up. Got one microphonic tube on this thing that I haven't quite sorted out. V2, it feels like, is a little bit microphonic, but you can take that with a grain of salt. Okay, this thing does have reverb as well, and we'll test that out here. It's that really cheesy, funky Valco reverb everybody loves so much. Funky Valco reverb, and if you turn on the tremolo with it, you get some really cool sounds. That's a 1965 Valco made Gretsch model 6162.